Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us again on Spirit Road. Thank you for checking in. I'm with my wonderful host, Tim, and our guest today, Gillian. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi,
So, Gillian, tell us a little bit about yourself. You live out in Washington State, correct?
I do. I live in Western Washington, um, a little bit north of Seattle.
Okay.
I always love the backgrounds, like the things, these little glimpses or windows into people's world. Like I'm curious about, gonna distract us right from the beginning here, but like the umbrella behind you, is there a story?
There is a story. That is an umbrella that one of my daughters made, and
Wow.
there's hand-drawn mandalas and flowers all over it
Yeah.
In sort of
that
that
she gave to
portal
me.
kind of way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, in a spiral for sure.
And I
Mhm.
know we
It's
know
really
this about
beautiful
you
up
too.
close.
Yeah, can kind of deduce from the background that you do a lot of work with crystals. And yeah.
I do love crystals, and I have them all over my house, probably in overabundance, but I actually don't believe in overabundance of crystals.
Yeah. Never can have too many. And there's always that next one that you can't live without.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Um,
Do you use them when you're doing Reiki and energy work with people as well?
I do. I have a lot of smaller, flatter ones that I use on body for Reiki or next to a person.
Hmm.
Um, I have a lot that I wear. I like these little cages, and I'll put,
Uh-huh.
Oh,
they
cool.
stretch, and I'll put some inside there. I like to hold them all the time.
Hmm.
Have them in my pocket, in my purse, in my, you know, all over, next to my bed, under the
Wow,
pillow.
that's
I mean,
great. So somebody turned you upside down and shook you, they'd probably all fall out of your pockets and everything. Yeah.
maybe there's been many times through the airport, I'm surprised I didn't get stopped. Like, what's going on there? What?
Right.
So I
That's
know
too
just
funny.
from journeying with you in Awkwardly Zen and things that you've done, you do wonderful clearings and things. And I know that crystals will sometimes inform that. And what's present in your practice right now? What kinds of things are coming up?
What is present in my practice? Um, well, I'm constantly doing a lot of clearings for people. There's been um, a lot of entity work that I've been doing, which is interesting. Um, a lot of dream interpretation is coming up.
Mm.
Um, a lot of people's dreams are pushing them to really step forward onto their path and clear out some of their trauma and some of their shadows and really move forward into what they're supposed to be doing. And what else?
So come back a minute. When you said you're doing entity work, can you kind of say more about that? What does that mean exactly?
Sometimes you get mm, an attachment, so to speak, like
Mhm.
um, that doesn't, maybe just a hitchhiker.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're negative and, they're more like an energy suck, but sometimes they just really are like a hitchhiker. They're just wanting to experience something on this earth plane, and you're like the host. And so they're experiencing some things through you. Um, Sometimes it's an agreement that you made, like in a past life, to have this. And so sometimes they're easy to remove, and sometimes you have to go to a little bit of a higher place, like a soul contract, and ask to be released from that. Because it is an energy suck, and it does make you really tired, and it prevents you from hearing your own guides and getting your own messages. You know, there's a little bit of there's interference.
Mm.
Right. Interesting. And so when you finally are able to kind of be in touch with that energy, how do you help the person release it, or what do you do with that energy?
Um, there's several different processes you can do. You can um, sometimes they're easy to just do a simple removal ceremony or a clearing ceremony. Sometimes you have to convince them that it's better for them not to be there. Sometimes you have to forcibly remove them, and, you know, like you put them in a box, so to speak, and send the box elsewhere, send it
Oh,
out into the ethers or to a different dimension or back to where they came from. It depends on this specific entity.
uh-huh. Okay, that makes sense.
Just
How
having a
would people know? I'm sorry, Tim. How would people know if they had that interfering with them?
Might be different ways. One of the ways it would be that you would be pretty tired. You might have interfering thoughts and you weren't sure where they're coming from. You wouldn't be able to hear your guides very well sometimes. If you're a pendulum worker, you might be getting weird answers or answers that didn't make sense. Um, your intuition might be off. Just some confusion, really.
Okay.
Some people might actually be able to see them or get glimpses of a second like energy hanging around them that doesn't feel like theirs or doesn't feel like their guides or an angel or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I was
Some
talking,
people might not know at all.
Right.
yeah, I was talking with a friend the other day about my spiritual experience or journey, I guess you would say, and how I was very open and had a lot of experiences when I was very young. And going into college, my freshman year of college, when I moved from my hometown to, where I went to school in Columbia, there was something that came with me, and it felt like there were um, darker presences in my hometown, for whatever reason, it felt like a very heavy place to me. And yeah, and when I left it, if it was very clear that something had come with me. And it was actually experiences like, and I haven't put a label on this, like, is this a spirit or a poltergeist or whatever it is, but there were moments where like the clothes hangers in my closet would start shaking on their own, or I would have these dreams that felt very distorted, and yeah, so in some cases it feels like that's very clear when that happens, but ultimately what that led for me was that I shut down everything. I closed myself off to any perception of that, and 20 years went by without me really even thinking about it. And then I had a very transformative experience in 2018 that brought me into this world again. um, but yeah, it's just interesting to think about
Yeah,
how energy can attach itself in different ways. And yeah.
for sure. There's different, sometimes they can be truly a spirit that needs to cross over.
Hmm.
If if a spirit passes or a human passes and the spirit is unsure of where to go or how to, they need sometimes they need some assistance. They will attach to somebody um, just because they don't have the knowledge of how to leave. And they may need some assistance that way, just some guidance to the light, so to speak. And I have found that people early on their journey are very open, like maybe you were, Tim. Like you haven't learned about boundaries yet or protection, and you might be trusting. And one thing that happened to me extremely early on in my journey, as I was very open and trusting and just eager to learn everything, and I had an entity masquerading as a guide. And how I realized it wasn't a guide is because it was telling me all these things that I should and shouldn't do. So your true guides are not going to be, they're going to be giving you some guidance, and they may answer some of your questions, but they're not going to be telling you, do this, not don't do this. Like
Mhm.
that's not their role. And it took some getting, it took some energy to get rid of it. They did not, that particular entity did not want to leave, and they were really angry because they'd been in my space for a long time. um I kind of got sucked into them. um so it's interesting, when you have, if you are somebody that can hear, if you have um some strong clairs, or you can see, whatever your clairs are, if they're telling you what you shouldn't do, then it's not somebody that should be hanging out with you.
That feels, yeah, feels like good advice.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah.
Seems like the discernment piece is pretty big lately. That's coming up for me a lot lately too. And that's like a really good question you can ask, is like, does this feel like it's being directive or supportive? And if it's directive,
Mhm.
maybe there's something to look at there. It might not be serving you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hmm.
You also work with an interesting group of individuals as well who are not from this planet.
I do.
You do. And I love that. You and I have those conversations on a regular basis. So, what are they saying to you these days?
Um, some of the things they're talking about lately is making sure that you're living in joy, and really making sure that you're doing the things that um, really make you happy and that keep you grounded. Um, there's just there's so many things that as humans we get caught up in, and we get stressed about and worried about, and sometimes we lose sight of really the amazing things that are here on this planet, and the amazing things that we have access to, whether your joy is getting out in nature or art or music. A lot of those things are different in other places, and we don't always have the strong emotional connection. Um, Other beings don't have the strong emotional connection like we humans do.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can be like a source of struggle, but it's also like hearing that that's also a gift in a way, right? Yeah.
It is a gift, right? Being able to really love and really feel that joy really deep in your body, that happiness and the big laughter and the things that also get us out of our head, you know.
Yeah.
And that's different for everybody. It might be gardening or writing or
Mhm.
singing, whatever.
Yeah. I know they've said that we take ourselves way too seriously.
Absolutely. I mean, the anxiety and the worry that many of us
Mm.
get it consumes us.
Mm.
It can consume us, and it
Yeah.
doesn't really, I mean, this is basic terms, but it doesn't always affect the outcome, all of our anxiety and all of our worry.
Rarely, actually.
It doesn't change the past, and it isn't probably going to affect the future.
Right.
I've really been caught up in this idea lately that to our mind and imagining is an experience. It may not be happening in the external world, but when we imagine it, we're taking it in as if it was. And how often we are trying to predict the future, and usually pretty wrong. I think things usually unfold in different ways, but like how much energy we're spending kind of catastrophizing or distorting or generalizing in such ways that we're creating unnecessary anxiety for ourselves. And then when something comes up that is validly a concern or something to move through, we're usually more graceful at moving through it than we think. And if we're not, we didn't have any control over that anyways, and it was just a lot of energy that led up to it that could have been joy until the
Absolutely.
catastrophe, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
The interstellars are a funny, interesting bunch.
They
They very
really
much
are.
look out for us on one hand, but they very much want us to enjoy our experience as well.
Mhm.
Um, and and to be open-minded about maybe some new things that are on the forefront.
So is
Mhm.
this a new part of your journey, kind of this communication, this
Um, I don't think so. It's it's been it's been a while. I'm pretty in tune with I guess I like to call them parallel lives.
Mhm.
Um, other lives that are happening, other soul aspect lives that are happening concurrently, like pieces of me in other places. And um, some of those are, I like, I guess I like to call them interstellars or intergalactic beings, or some people call them aliens. That's not my favorite word because it has a negative connotation. And
Mhm.
there's so much more than that, you know. Um, so I can really check in with some of those and those other soul aspects. And there's a lot of similarities with with our human lives, but there's many differences too. And it's really exciting for me to know that there's so much more expansion out there available to us. And hopefully one day we'll get there. Um, it's the travel and the telepathy and the um, different power uses and the I don't know. There's so many different aspects that are fascinating, and you know, I can't even imagine to think that we were just the only thing there.
mhm.
There's so
I'm
much more.
excited to maybe reach that level of telepathy that they use to communicate
Mm-hmm.
because you get s- our language is so limiting that when you're communicating telepathically, you receive so much more information.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My biggest struggle channeling is the limited English language, trying to
Yeah.
translate
Yeah.
the information. I can't tell you how many times I say I just don't have the words.
Right. Yeah. I'm finding myself saying that more and more because I not only get what like the information, but I get all the emotion or the feeling and the it's just beyond words because it's like we're experiencing it and it's hard to express and experience sometimes in our language. You just don't get the full depth of it sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I get a lot of images too, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to um, describe them
Mhm.
uh, with enough depth that somebody else can really see it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say that a lot to friends. It's like, if you could just get inside my head and see what I see, then you would understand. Eventually, right?
Definitely,
Eventually.
definitely.
Yeah.
Take a snapshot picture and then show you.
Yeah.
Or if I
Exactly.
had the gift of drawing, which I don't,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that could be pretty
Or if we just had like a
cool.
little instant camera in our heads and we could just snap a picture and pull it out.
Well, I think if we were at a higher dimension and we could communicate
Mhm.
telepathically, we would be able to like say, here, just come inside for a second. I want to show you. Or I want to I'm gonna have let you feel like maybe you could hold somebody's hand and
Right.
they could feel
Or maybe
and
like,
sense the whole thing.
was it Star Trek, the Vulcan mind meld thing?
Right.
Yeah, we could do something like that perhaps. Yeah.
It's funny sometimes I feel like in this journey and in this community sometimes I'm like I'm the voice of I don't want to say voice of dissonance, but like for me it's been such a journey to integrate some of these things, to even imagine some of what you talk about. And yet I've also had that experience. Like in this moment, I'm thinking about a couple of instances of having what one would call a download.
Mhm.
And it is something that's really hard to put into words. I can describe it. I can say I was laying in bed and suddenly it was like somebody had a slideshow, that like where there's that black as the slides are switching, but it was happening super fast and there was images and sacred geometry and impressions and sensations, just one right after the other. And it was so fast, there was no way to process that. But
Mhm.
even to just put into words the experience of like witnessing that in my mind's eye. I know I talk sometimes like I can tell when I am imagining something, I'm creating something. I can feel that part of my brain, the gear that's turning, that's bringing these images to mind. And then there's the experience of something coming from outside of you, like you're just witness to it. It's happening and you have no idea and you don't know where it's coming from. It's just there. Um, but yeah, it's like to be able to communicate what that experience is like. If you haven't
Yeah.
had that, can be very difficult. And I feel like that's probably true for people who are having sensations of interstellar communication, things like that. I've told Laurie this before, but I just recently had what I believe was my first experience of that, where sometimes at night I'll try and open to channeling, and I will often get this higher self kind of voice come through, and it's like this is very familiar. I could imagine that I'm imagining this, it's like it feels wiser than me, but it's not really. It is me. And then in the midst of that, having something come in that was so incredibly foreign and unexpected that I just almost sat up in bed, and having this conversation that unfolded with, even asking, or is this an interstellar, and getting a very immediate yes. And
Mhm.
remember asking the question, what do you get out of this? Like, I know what I'm getting out of this, but what are you getting out of this? And really getting back this very clear kind of picture of what it looks like to a higher vibrational being to see a conscious intention to connect. It looked like lightning in clouds in a way, but it's like, um, this feeling of like bringing us into community or into this higher space so that we can continue in our conscious evolution, and
Mhm.
really beautiful. And also, um, not imposing in any kind of way. Like sometimes I feel like if I reach out to other people, to guides, whatever it is, that I'm somehow imposing on them, but recognizing I'm doing that with my 3D world, A to B to C, linear kind of understanding of how communication works. And in that sense, it's like there's this knowing that happens that doesn't require the same level of effort that we're making. It's
Mhm.
like, um, thinking of when our loved ones visit us through messaging or things, how they're coming to us as an impression of who we knew in the world, but there's so much more to them than that. It's just an impression of something much larger. And yeah, that was kind of what I was left with after that brief interaction. And then it was like someone turned the knob and it was like Charlie Brown speak. It's like I lost the signal whatever that
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's really cool. I love that you talked about your imagination. I
Mhm.
feel that um, our imagination is only so deep as some of our experiences that we've had, maybe in a different lifetime. You know, that's just my personal opinion that we draw on. They may be dormant, but they're somewhere in our brain, and our imagination can really pull from it.
Mhm.
Um, Also, when you were talking, I was thinking about, you were talking about moving into a higher consciousness. I really feel like we we had this higher consciousness, and then there was some sort of regression, some sort of setback, and Earth humans, um, our evolution kind of digressed a little bit, and then now we've spent all of these years kind of getting back up to speed. I think we're getting very close to that, moving into that higher consciousness, into that space. From a mm, interstellar standpoint, it's there's some information out there that talks about how Earth was seeded to be like a vacation spot, so to speak. It's so beautiful with our many different climates that we have here, and the different species of plants and animals, and were picked um, very specifically for their beauty and all the things that they bring. And we have a lot of things on this planet that other planets don't have. Our oceans and our mountains and everything that encompasses this whole planet is absolutely beautiful. And I I can sort of imagine a future where we're interacting with interstellars and they come here because it's so amazing. They come here for a vacation.
I really
That
love
would be
the
so cool.
yeah, I really love the idea that regardless of um what anyone believes or doesn't believe, like just to hold that perspective right there of like, can we recognize just the beauty of this world, this rock floating through space at 1,000 miles an hour, that we happen to have landed on, just like to like even to take that perspective of what if I didn't know what any of this was and I was stepping onto this planet for the first time and into this world for the first time and into this place for the first time, like what would I see? Like if I could see it with eyes of wonder, it's like it is paradise.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there a way that we as a race or culture or society, whatever you would say, can somehow reconnect to that? And maybe that is what this evolution of consciousness is about too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to think that that's part of it for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's really nice having you here today. Is there no just before we kind of wrap up, what's happening for you in the awkwardly Zen world and in your own practices? Are there ways people can find you or offerings that you'd care to share here?
Yeah. Well, I can be found on the partner page at awkwardlyzen.com. I can also be found at goldenmeanscrystalreiki.com. And we've talked a little bit about a couple things that I do: the Reiki, the crystal Reiki, and the clearings, dream interpretation. Um, and there's mediumship and things like that.
And say the
Kind of
website
dabble
one
in
more
a
time. Golden.
golden means crystal Reiki.
Okay.
That came about because in my younger days, I used to have a catering business and it was called Golden Means. And the G and the M are my initials. And then moving into a more spiritual realm, I was really struggling with a name. And I heard this, you already have the name. And the golden mean is the Fibonacci ratio, right? So I was like, oh, well, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Um, just another, I love that ratio. I love seeing it in nature, the spiral aspect of it. Part of it's incorporated, I like to believe, a little bit into some of the Reiki symbols,
Mhm.
you know. So there's that. And I love talking to anybody about anything spiritual, helping them on their journey, helping them understand their core soul, or get in touch with your guides, or working with what brings you joy, getting there.
And you're really, really good at dream interpretation.
I love that. It's
Yeah,
so fascinating.
it is.
Our dreams tell us so much.
Mhm.
They tell us years ahead of time if there's an illness that we're going to have. They tell us what different modalities we should be working with. Very early on, I had a dream, and there was this pile of crystals in my dream. And then there was a black and white sign, and it said, figure out what's what. I'm like, okay, that's a lot. I was really overwhelmed by trying to figure out what all the crystals meant. So I really dove in and started studying them, learning about all the different ways they can help us. And then just everything else, every next step showed up in my dreams.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah,
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 I love it.
yeah. Dreams are fun. I love dreams. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for
Yes,
having me.
Of course, we'll have you back.
Right. Sounds wonderful.